Good afternoon and welcome to On Brand from Muse by Clio. I'm Nicole Purcell, the president of the Clio Awards. And with everything that's been going on in the world today, we have been changing our business, what we're doing, and it made me think about what are other companies doing today and how are they making their business better, evolving, talking with their staff. So we decided to take you into the homes of top marketing leaders that inspire us and see how they're evolving with what's going on. Before I bring in our first guest, I would love to introduce my co-host, Muse by Clio's editor-in-chief, Mr. Tim Nudd.
Hey, Nicole.
Hey, Tim. How are you?
I'm doing fine. It's a lovely day up here in Maine. Kids are out of the house. It couldn't be better, actually, at the moment.
Kids are out of the house, but the dog's in the house, right?
Dog's on the couch right here, yeah. So we'll see if he pipes up. I wanted to give a brief introduction to our first guest today. Really excited to have him on. It's David Rubin, the CMO of the New York Times. And before David joins us, wanted to give a little background about him. So he graduated Yale undergrad with a degree in history. He has an MBA from Wharton. Early in his career, he spent about 15 years at Unilever. A lot of that time working on Axe during the sort of creative heyday of that brand. He also spent several years at Pinterest, where I'm sure he learned a lot about how to run a digital business, which the Times, of course, is very much a digital business now. He joined the Times in 2016, originally as head of brand. In 2018, he was named CMO. And I don't think it's an understatement to say that during his tenure, he's, I think, really helped the Times change the way it thinks about how and why it should be marketing itself. And in particular, of course, he's presided over the remarkable brand campaign from Droga 5 that's really been one of the most celebrated ad campaigns of the past decade. It's all centered around Times journalists and sort of the incredible resourcefulness and sheer force of will that it takes for them to bring us the truth every day in print and online. So before we bring David out, I did want to show one of those commercials. This one's from, I think, the fall of 2018. The theme is the truth is worth it, and it's a piece about the Times investigation into President Trump's finances.
And also a Clio Award winner.
That's right.
I got a very, very small loan from my father.
You've got to start somewhere.
I'm a reporter from the New York Times, aware of bank statements, tax returns, thousands of property records, deeds, and mortgages. In 1995, showed that he was bleeding money.
Go through it all, understand it all.
Holy.
Number by number, brick by brick.
That's when we realized
that's fraud.
I built this empire. I did it by myself.
So great.
Incredible campaign. Grand Clio winner in film last year. And I'm sure we'll talk about that and a lot more. So would love to welcome David Rubin.
Hi, David.
Hey there. How are you guys doing?
Good. I feel like I want some cheers going on. We're so excited to have you.
I'm excited to be here. I am jealous, Tim, of the idea of your dog sitting peacefully in the background. We have an 8-week-old puppy here, and that's not what it feels like.
Well, give it a few minutes. If he hears anything outside, he'll go nuts.
Well, and that kind of leads us to, how is it working from home? Where are you? Who are you living with? What's going on there? My dog is actually sleeping right next to me, and he's going to be a year old next month. So,
wow. Well, it's good to know that it may not take. I thought they had to be 10 before he's returned.
Yeah.
I live in Montclair, New Jersey. I'm here with my wife and my 9 and 12-year-old daughters. So, doing their e-learning at the same time that we're both working, and that seemed so easy, which it did not, that we decided to add a puppy about 2.5 weeks ago.
Oh my God.
So, you know, my children, their summer camps were canceled. So we're going to be here all summer with literally very little for them to do. So it's an interesting experience. We're all getting to know each other even better than we did. But it is nice. I'll say, you know, I don't know that I envisioned having, you know, 35, 40 straight days of family dinners, and that part is definitely nice.
That's amazing. Yeah. Are you able to help out with the school? Like, do you help them with any of the schoolwork or?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Definitely. I try to block a window at the beginning of the day, the end of the day, and then at lunchtime. So I tend to feed them in the middle of the day, myself, and then get them started, and then do any of the wrap up, and then my wife tries to supplement that with her schedule. I mean, it's not always easy to block those windows like we want to, but we try to.
Great.
Yeah, we've been running a lot of work from home diaries on Muse, and the lengths to which people go to deal with homeschooling is tricky.
Yeah, look, and I think it's important too, just to as a signal to my team, we're all dealing with something. Everybody's something is different, but we've all got one thing or another, and it's not any different for me. And it's permission for them to deal with whatever they need to deal with. And we're all trying to support each other and understand that we've all got different stuff going on, and it is what it is. And we got to get through it, and it's likely not going to be short. So it already hasn't been.
No, it hasn't been.
I mean, big picture, obviously there's challenges and everyone's got their own thing, but big picture, we're operating, the paper's going out, the news is, running, the newsroom's amazing what they're capable of. And our business, as we announced in our earnings last month, is going very well. So at least on the subscription side.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, obviously COVID has disrupted so much. It's been a global crisis. And then, recently the Black Lives Matter global protest as well has been such a huge global story. And I'm curious, maybe we could start off just talking about how both of those events have sort of changed the Times business over the last few months, and how that's affected, how you do the marketing.
Well, I think the virus has really has really shown us that we can work remotely. It's accelerated a lot of things that we either thought weren't possible or weren't on the priority list. As an example, my team looks after our customer care, and we have been talking about a very long ramp to enabling work from home for the agents. And we were able to end up doing that in a couple of weeks, something that we had said was not possible.
Wow.
As soon as it became do it or don't or not needs, right? We figured out how to do it. And so there's a bunch of those examples in lots of places. The Black Lives Matter and the larger race conversation has been, I think, a very different kind of thing. For us, it's been, it's really prompted not only an external discussion, but an internal discussion. What is it like for inclusion and diversity inside the Times? And we have work to do. And our employees are making that very clear to us. And also, it raises questions for us, being that we are a journalistic organization. How does that work, and what does that mean? And how can we express, historically the company doesn't really express corporate values historically as a media and as a news organization, and our employees are asking us to find new avenues for doing that. But we need to do that in a way that respects the independence of the journalism, which is of course our customer proposition and our mission to the world. And so we're finding ways to do both those things. But it's an evolution.
Yeah. So is that making it into consumer-faced marketing right now? Like, sort of trying to distill your values around Black Lives Matter and those discussions?
We have not done that specifically since the since the protests have started. This round, obviously, we did do an ad at the beginning of the year around the journalism that Nicole Hannah-Jones and the New York Times Magazine did around the 1619 Project. And we did that ad with Janelle Monáe, and that was a different kind of ad from some of the other things we've done in the campaign, including that we had someone in the ad who was not part of the journalism. And so that's something we did, although that was not specific to to this movement, but it's something where we talked about race and where we're going as a country and how to think about it. So That's the one. That's the one piece of communication, in sort of a television communication that we have.
I see. Okay. Well, you did do a new spot in the brand campaign, sort of around COVID, which we can show now. If Carly, if you want to bring it up. So I'd love to get the story behind that one, because it's even more sort of spare and pulled back than the other stuff, which already was sort of text-based. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, it's actually fairly similar to the very first ad that we ran, at least when I was there, which was in March of 2017, so Oscars 2017, and different message, but that ad was all about the journalistic process and unearthing facts, and that ad was "The Truth Is Hard." And so very similar message here, just about that the role of journalism is to help people know what to trust and to combat misinformation and to create a base of things we can count on, because they've been independently third-party verified through the journalistic process, through the experts who do our journalism. And we don't publish until we know those things, till we've done the work. And so one of the things that's sort of the backbone of all of the campaign is that when we say that the truth is hard, or the truth has a voice, or the truth is worth it, we're referring to the journalistic process. We try very hard not to have it be that what we're saying is we think the Times is the truth, or the only source of truth, or even that we don't get things wrong. But that there's a journalistic process that, with our readers being on their own journey to find the truth, that we think journalism plays a role. And I think one of the things that has been good about the last 3-4 years is I think people have realized that quality, original, independent journalism is really important to society, and has restored some people's belief in that we do need to protect, that function of journalism, and at all levels, not just at the national and global level like the New York Times, but also at the local level.
Speaking about process, David, I mean, I'm curious about how you work with your creative agency, Droga 5, and how they helped you express the brands and some of the changes they did with you.
Yeah, look, I think Droga is an amazing agency, and our team at Droga is wonderful. And what they help us do, I think, is a couple of things. First of all, is they provide that independent view to the Times's independent view. Just not being part of the organization. They can help us make sure we communicate in a way that that isn't. Journalists are amazing, but they do have a shorthand, and historically, and that shorthand isn't something that everyone knows. And so they talk about their own work, I should say. And so I think Droga helps us communicate the process of journalism, in a way that is compelling. Ultimately, most of our ads, if not all, are really just classic "how the sausage gets made" ads. Historically, those don't work real well. Historically, they sort of are yawners. And what Droga has done is helped us tell that story in a way that is really compelling, and done it in the impossible confines of a 30-second ad, that feel like a mini. Somebody referred to the campaign as feeling like mini movies about how journalism gets done, and that's really hard to do in 20-some seconds. You slap the end cards on and whatever else. So that's what I think they really help us do. Now, and it's really hard because we have a lot of constraints. First of all, we only talk about our, almost always we're only talking about our work. If it hasn't been run in the paper or in, one of our digital properties, we don't it has to, that the journalism has to precede the marketing.
Right.
And so, and then, we're often using headlines or leads of stories. And so they are what they are, or they were what they were. And so Droga's working with they're creating an ad out of writing that is handed to them.
That's cool.
They curate it. And then on top of that, not all of our ads, but some of the ads, like the first one you showed, the Truth is Worth It campaign, we only use imagery that almost always we're using imagery that was used in the journalism. And so, and it has to be in the context that it was used in the journalism. So, again, it's a lot of mining and looking for the thing that will tell the story we want to tell and understanding the original context. The journalists have been very gracious with their time and helping us understand what was in their mind and what did they go through and what were the hardships. And so those are all things that then Droga takes as inputs and figures out how to tell a story.
So you had the journalists sit with Droga as well to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, we're very respectful that the journalists have a day job that is not making advertising, so that the journalists aren't making our ads. Right. But they consult on the work to make sure that to tell their stories. A lot of the ads are narrated by the journalists themselves. Cool. So obviously they're a part of it for that. And they do so in their own words. Yeah. We don't script it for them.
One of the things that I found fascinating is that you are the first CMO at the Times, which is amazing. Congratulations. I know it's been a little while now, but how did that come about? Why wasn't there a CMO before? How did you come into the position? I want to hear that story.
So I don't really know the 160-year history to why we got the CMO, and we're so careful with that claim only because for all I know, 100 years ago there was one.
Different title maybe.
But certainly in modern memory, we couldn't find another.
Right.
And I think the real thing is more of less about why there wasn't one, but why is there one now? Yeah. And we've been on this journey since our now publisher A.G. Sulzberger wrote the innovation report about 6 years ago. And it was what does the Times need to do to really embrace the digital era? And one of the hallmarks of that report was a statement that we needed to be subscriber first. And that has led us on a journey. You've got the paywall, you've got this commitment to digital, commitment to a subscriber first business. It's not that we don't have an ad business, and it's not that we don't plan to continue to have an ad business, but our strategy is to make a super compelling reader subscription business, and then everything flows from there. And so in doing that, we really become a consumer brand. And I tend to think of it as like a nonfiction Netflix or HBO or Spotify, or maybe some combination of those three. A combination worth investing in probably, but a combination of the three. And so that kind of that mindset of a subscription business, and those are all businesses that market themselves. And that have robust marketing departments. And so that's kind of the journey we've been on is that as a subscription first business, we need to have deep relationships with readers. Mm-hmm. That's that's kind of the context that led them to say, well, we really need a marketing department and a marketer who can come in and help us tell the story more about subscription journalism and why you should subscribe to the Times. The other context about us is that, I think people think of the news as a single thing, or even the media as a single thing. The reality is, I look at it as a consumer product marketer, is we're in a really undeveloped category, which is subscription-based journalism. It's really small. There's 185 million people who interact with digital news, read digital news in the US, plus another global audience every month. And the number who pay for digital news is, in the 20s. And so imagine another business, imagine any other business where you've got half of America interacting with it and a fifth or a sixth of those paying, and the rest getting that hamburger listening to that music for free. You know, it would be very hard. And so that is that is the world we're in, and we're trying to tell people that even though there is free news, what you're getting from the Times or other brands like ourselves, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, others, a lot of local journalism, that if you don't pay for it, you know, you get what you pay for, and it's not going to be around. And so telling that category story is a lot of what our marketing job is. Journalism worth paying for.
Awesome.
David, I think we have an image of what some of the Times advertising used to look like when it was a lot more transactional.
You had nothing to do with this, right?
This was the audit that our creative director, Laura Ford, myself did when I came in. And this is what the work looked like, you know, before the ad you showed at the beginning. And look, this is not to you know, say anything about this work. You know, each of the individual pieces are fine, but I think you don't get a sense of any consistency, right? You don't get the mission. I mean, the thing about the Times is every business is trying to figure out what its mission is, right? And we've had one for 150 years before anybody talked about the term, you know, mission marketing, vision-based marketing, purpose-led marketing. And so we've got this huge asset in the news business, and no one was using it. You know, we saw that as the journalist's job to convey through the journalism, and the marketing's job was just to tell you about the offer. And so, look, I still have very aggressive performance goals. Like I said, we're a nascent category. We're a public company with quarterly goals, so none of that goes away. But we still believe that we can achieve those and tell our story with both an emotional message and the offer and a functional message at the same time. And our team is really talented and works really hard. It's harder that way, but they work really hard to make sure that we do both, so that we're building the category, we're telling our mission, and we're achieving our short-term objectives.
Yeah, I'm curious how you balance that. You know, the more sort of high-level brand building stuff, and then the performance stuff, and also how you measure the brand building work.
Yeah, I mean, look, the good news is, look, I believe all categories have an emotional component. All you have to do is go back and look at, Tim, I know in the intro you mentioned that I worked on the team that brought Axe body spray to the United States. Before Axe came to the US, everyone would have said that deodorants was a only functional category. And also would have said that it was pretty much a passive category, right? You know, that you just didn't, communication was all about the function, and it was just functional. And Axe came in and showed that there could be an emotional story, and that people could seek out a brand. And when it first launched, there were college age young men leaving the product on their counter even when they weren't using it. So people could see it. Yeah, but that didn't happen in the category. And I think the thing that was so amazing was that other brands then learned that they could do a similar style. So it wasn't just, a one-off thing. The whole category became emotional. And people stopped, just saying 36 hours of protection, which was an actual line that someone was using. You don't shower for a day and a half. It's the perfect brand for you. And so people stopped, what comes after 36 hours, I guess 40 and 50. And so instead they talked about how it makes you feel. And that's how the category still is today. And so I believe that it can be done in any category. I believe it's super hard. But I believe that it can be done. And so, look, news has always been a high interest category, but it's also been a category that's characterized by a sea of sameness. And the Times really believes that what it's doing is special and important to the world. And so I was just, what the team and I try to do is literally just take the work that's already happening and make sure that backstory is understood.
It's not a category lacking in emotion, though. The news business. I mean, I wonder, how you, looking back through your journey from Axe to Pinterest and now to the Times, do you feel like creativity is sort of locating that emotion and sort of expressing it and getting people to lean into it?
I do, but I think it is about making sure that you unlock that emotion in a way that drives business results. I think sometimes we just unlock the emotion. And sometimes we just get the business results. And the key is to do both. And of course, that's what makes it super hard. And means that you gotta work really hard at it, and you've got to push and not accept till you get there. But I do think it requires both.
Yeah. Do you feel like, I mean, I think it's an interesting career path that you have. I think the stuff you did on Axe was obviously really breakthrough and interesting and emotion driven. And then you go to Pinterest, which I'm not sure they ever knew that they wanted to advertise either, or why they would. It's more of a digital business. Can you tell us a little bit about your time at Pinterest and sort of what you learned about creativity from being there?
Yeah, I mean, I was only at Pinterest 2 years, which, for Silicon Valley company is not as fast as it sounds, but was, certainly wasn't forever. And it was relatively early in the process. So we were working on some advertising that eventually came out right around the time I left. But I think the biggest thing we did was more, rather than like paid big advertising, we did a bunch of storytelling about what the product was about. And Pinterest has always had the emotion side, but it was about making it appeal to a broader group. And the other thing was that Pinterest, when I arrived, was very much thought of as a social network, or a different kind of social network, but still a social network. And Pinterest thinks of itself now and then, but as more of as a visual search engine and a problem solution. And so how did we reframe that? And so we did a lot of ads about inspiration, about acting on your inspiration. Ads are probably the wrong word, but we were doing videos and films, and we did a campaign around Valentine's Day where you could send a thank you pin that were highly stylized from illustrators that showed how the product can be used. And then we did those use cases out to our audience, which then showed others how they could do that to their own friends and family. And so it was a lot of product marketing and a bit of kind of to frame the communication around how we shift the dialogue about what was this product and who was it for.
So I have something quick because I've been on too many Zoom calls, obviously working remotely. But how has it been for you working remotely, communicating with your team? What are you using? Do you have Zoom fatigue as well? I feel like this is all I hear from our clients too. It's like I'm on constant Zoom calls and this is what's happening. And how are you really, getting the creativity from your team or your partners as well?
Yeah, I mean, look, we were able to bring out that ad that you showed, and it was a lot of work, and it was we spent a lot of time because it was really important to us that the language be right and the sentiment be right, and we took our time. Actually, it was fairly recent. And so, look, I think it's hard, like it is for everyone. And yeah, it's hard going meeting to meeting. My team actually was putting their hand up that, at least in the office, you have to go from room to room and stand up, and you can take a bio break.
Yep.
In Zoom, if you're back to back, you don't even get to do that. So they push me, and I actually do all my meetings at the 05 or the 35, just so that we get 5 minutes to like reset. Mm-hmm. And we were trying to do the cutoff 5 minutes early, and that didn't work because human nature, you just keep going. For some reason, starting late works better for us than finishing early. So it's the practical tip. But so yeah, I know it's hard, and I think that the thing that's been really interesting, I think, is just how the part that is shared is that it's hard. After that, everything is unique and personal. Mm-hmm. And so what's making it hard for you, Nicole, is different than Tim and different than me. Yeah. And so we have some people who are looking for more interaction. They're alone in an apartment that's small in the city, and they're not even comfortable walking around their building, and it's hard to get outside. And then there are people in the suburbs like me, who we're trying to juggle a chaos inside the building. And then you add to it the last week and a half, and everybody's interest in what's going on in the outside world and in being a part of that. And so, yeah, it's just, trying, the biggest thing is just trying to be there for everybody and make it really clear that like engaging with those other things in your life is perfectly fine. And that we're all here to support each other. And that if you need to take your minute, or frankly, you're even in the middle and you need to cut something off, like nobody's going to say anything to you. It just is what it is.
I think I've seen that a lot. And I think, like you were saying even before, taking breaks to go teach with your kids, help them learn, or have lunch with them. And everyone has to learn a little something different. I still like phone calls. Like a lot of people like to Slack, and I just, I like seeing your face and talking to you. Like I feel like it's more engaging and I get more out of it. But I do miss the office. I'm just going to say that. I know Tim is fine working from home in Maine, but and I know you were talking about Pinterest and social media, for the times, what has been a useful platform socially for you guys in this time that you've been using a lot or focusing on?
I mean, look, we the Times has a robust publishing, effort outside of the Times. But the interesting thing is that as a subscription first business, what we've really realized is that while the social platforms are important to us, ultimately we need you to interact. Your best experience is when you interact with our journalism in our product. Mm-hmm. And that's the place where we can give you more context, and where we can connect all the dots, and where the visual journalism is designed for those platforms. And so we can, the infographics and the things that really set Times storytelling apart. And so our big objective is to make sure that we're getting you to recognize that coming to the Times site or the Times app is the place where you're going to get the most from it. And that's hard because, obviously people are used to interacting with it out in the diaspora.
I suppose that's not true. Maybe not as true with the podcast, though, or I think you guys have a TV show too. Could you talk about those two platforms and how useful they are?
Yeah. So The Daily is one of the top, many weeks it's the top podcast in America. It's been amazing to see the reaction of the audience. It is, it's not something that's behind our paywall. But what's interesting is, and I will admit, as a marketer, I didn't expect this to be the case. I was quite worried about whether we were giving away the product for free, a really good version of the product. And it turns out that people who find us through The Daily end up coming to read the core product more, and therefore then have a propensity to subscribe. And so it ends up being a really good way to get introduced to Times journalism. We also have had much of last year a television show on FX and Hulu called The Weekly, which I think is what you're referring to.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I feel like I'm a Times subscriber, and there's so much content as well. I'm curious how you guys decide sort of what to put your marketing dollars behind. I mean, I'm sure there's so many products that are interesting products, different subscription products. You've got the crossword, you've got cooking recipes, you've got all sorts of stuff. I mean, how do you sort of prioritize, what sections and what content to push forward?
Well, the pushing of the content is really a journalistic effort. So, the difference between myself and a lot of CMOs is I don't own the content. Mm-hmm. Right? Many companies, the marketing office is the content creation engine. Yeah. That's our newsroom, or our opinion department. And so the journalists do that, and they have all of the organic, the Facebook handle, the Instagram handle, all of everything we do in Google, all of that is newsroom driven and is editorial judgment. Marketing team then comes in and decides what to put paid media behind, which is a fraction of the audience that we get in organic. We're the opposite of another company, most companies, because we are a publisher. And then we decide what stories to tell on platform and off platform. which we do by looking at the journalism that was made, looking at the reception to that journalism, and looking at what was the backstory. So, back to the Droga thing we were talking about, we're looking for where there's not just an important piece of journalism, but where the story of its creation was interesting enough to tell in a format, if it's for television, in a 30-second format, where we can tell that story and where we have the assets to do so, which is another trick.
Yeah, that's interesting. The journalists must love the marketing now, because it is the journalism.
Showcasing them.
It's been the most rewarding part of working there. Is I don't know about you all, but the things that journalists go through to do their jobs, many of them are real. They're really incredible sacrifices. And they're often putting themselves in harm's way and being threatened and sometimes physical harm. And they do that because they believe in the importance of journalism. And so to be able to try to tell their story and make a market for that, and help make it possible for them to do more of what they do that I believe that society and the world needs is, it's definitely motivating.
Yeah.
And their reaction to our marketing team, where they'll call and say, they'll now, reach out and say, hey, we did this, we want to talk about it. And that's a huge shift. Yeah, so it's really humbling.
Yeah, journalists are not historically fond of marketing. They tend to.
Yeah, look, I think that there's certainly plenty of our marketing that is acquisition based.
Yeah.
That where we're just telling a little bit of our mission and we go forward. But the stuff where we're really telling the ins and outs of how a piece of journalism got done. They obviously help immensely.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's such an unsettled time right now. So I'm curious. You probably had various marketing plans for the year when February and March kind of rolled in. What is your strategy and creative? How do you envision that kind of unfolding over the next sort of 6 to 12 months?
Look, because we are the news business, our work has to be at the speed of news, and so we're not really at the speed of news. They're a lot more nimble than we are, but almost every ad we've made has been in a roughly 6-week kind of window. We had been, we often have been working longer than that, but we had been working on things that didn't come to life, right? The actual hey, wow, that's a good one. Let's go get that. Was in a 6 to 12 weeks for sure. Some of them, like the 1619 ad, which is actually the only thing I've worked on that was purely a new shoot. It's the only real sort of proper shoot, if you will, that we've done. We've had some where we've done some pickups and that kind of thing, but generally speaking, we're working pretty nimbly, and that's because we think we can, but it's really because we just that's how the news cycle works, right? And we want to be talking about what people are thinking about, and the journalism that's made an impact while they remember it. And so that's what we do.
Before we go, what are you most hopeful for professionally and personally as we proceed through this crisis?
Look, I think I think ultimately there's a role for businesses and brands in helping to make the world a better place. And one of the reasons that I'm at the New York Times is that journalism has always believed that, that's their role. But I'm hopeful that that marketing as a whole can do that more than it has, in the right way, and that the line between mission, brand, and business they're not 3 separate concepts. I think that's what the success of the Times in the last few years shows, is that those 3 things are the same at the Times. Now it's really hard in our industry to make those 3 things come together, but that doesn't mean it isn't an effort worth pursuing. And when you get it right, it unlocks growth. And so I think that's what we show.
Awesome.
Well, I think that's all we have for you, David. I know we're big fans of the work you do. And,
big fans.
Thank you.
We've
It was
honored.
so fun.
We've honored you at our show a few times, and
we appreciate that.
We love seeing the new work. I remember when that first Oscars ad came out, and President Trump tweeted a nasty response to it.
That's so shocking.
I figured you guys were doing the right thing at that point.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it, and it's certainly it's been humbling to see all the response to the work, and we appreciate the recognition, and thank you.
Great. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everybody, for watching today. For daily coverage of creativity, please visit musebyclio.com. We publish stories every day about great new creative work happening in brand marketing, music, entertainment, sports, fashion, and a lot more. And we'll also be back next week with another episode of On Brand. Thanks.